I was 22 when I ended things with Sam. We had been together for over a year and a half, and on paper, it looked like the kind of relationship everyone wanted. Constant attention, sweet texts, surprise date nights. But over time, that attention became surveillance. Those texts turned demanding. The surprises began feeling like traps, and by the end, it wasn't love anymore. It was fear in disguise. When we met, he swept me off my feet. He remembered the tiniest things I said. How I liked my coffee, the way I tucked my hair behind my ear when I was nervous. He brought me flowers every Sunday and left little notes in my jacket pockets. It was romantic, but even in the beginning, something felt too much. He once bought me a dress in my exact size even though I'd never told him. He said he guessed. Looking back, I realize he probably went through my closet. I should have known. But I was young. I told myself I was lucky, that he just loved me hard. But as the months went on, his affection became possessiveness. If I took too long to reply, he'd send 10 texts in a row. If I posted on social media without telling him where I was, he'd accuse me of hiding things. He'd screenshot photos of male friends who liked my posts and demand to know who they were. Every day began to feel like a cross-examination. The final straw came on a rainy Tuesday night. I was asleep when I felt him get out of bed. I pretended to be asleep, thinking maybe he was just going to the bathroom. But I heard him unzip my purse. Then the quiet tapping of phone buttons. He was going through my messages. I sat up and said his name. He froze. I saw fear on his face, but it wasn't guilt. It was the fear of being caught, of losing control. I broke up with him the next morning. He didn't fight, didn't cry, just stared at me and said, "Are you sure?" I nodded. He left without another word. I remember standing by the door long after it shut, waiting to hear him come back. He never did, at least not that day. The next week was calm, too calm. I blocked his number, removed him from socials, even told mutual friends not to give out my new address when I moved a month later. I wanted a fresh start. For a while it worked. But one night I was locking up after a late shift at the cafe where I worked, and I saw a car idling across the street, headlights off, just sitting there. When I walked toward it, it pulled away slowly. I didn't see the driver, but I didn't have to. I knew it was him. Then the calls started, blocked number, no voice, just breathing, always around midnight. Every time I answered, I told myself it might be someone else. A prank maybe, but deep down I knew. It was Sam. I started leaving lights on, moved my bed away from the window, slept with a hammer under my pillow. I went to the police. They took a report but said without evidence or a direct threat, there wasn't much they could do. They suggested a restraining order, but without proof of who was calling or showing up, it was just a piece of paper. I started logging everything, call times, texts, photos of the same car driving past my apartment. Then came the note, taped to my front door in the middle of the night. "You really thought I couldn't find you?" In his handwriting. No envelope, no stamp, which meant he'd been at my door. I didn't sleep for 3 days. I took sick leave from work. I considered moving again. That weekend, I installed a security camera above my door. The next night, at 2:17 a.m., the camera caught someone standing just out of frame. A shadow, not enough for facial ID. But the next morning, I found a gift box on my doorstep. Inside was a Polaroid of me, taken inside the cafe. I was laughing with a customer, my back to the entrance. The photo was printed on glossy paper. On the back, he'd written, "You smile for everyone but me." I changed my locks, slept at a friend's place. But even there, I started getting texts again, this time from a different number. "I miss you. You don't have to be afraid of me. You were perfect, but you made me ugly." My friends told me to change my number again, but I didn't see the point. He always found it. I thought about buying a weapon. Instead, I bought blackout curtains and kept a chair jammed under the door every night. Then one night, I came home and saw muddy footprints on the kitchen floor, just one set. They didn't match my shoes. I checked the windows, one was cracked open. I hadn't used it in weeks. I checked the closet. On the floor was an old hoodie, one I'd thrown out months ago, folded neatly. I called the police again. This time, they brought in a canine unit. The dog picked up a scent but lost it outside the building. They told me to stay with someone else for a while, so I did. But when I came back 2 weeks later, there was a message carved into my bathroom mirror. Not written, carved. It said, "Don't disappear on me again." That was the night I knew I had to leave. Not the apartment, the state. I quit my job, packed everything I owned, and moved across the country. I changed my name on social media, deleted old photos, even paid to have my info scrubbed from people search sites. For the first time in months, I could breathe. It lasted nearly a year. Then last week I found something in my mailbox. No name, no address, just a key, my old apartment key, the one I lost a year ago. Attached was a tag that read, "You always forget things. He's still out there, watching, waiting. And if I ever disappear, I need someone to know." It was him.
She was still in love. Back in college, I dated a girl named Maya. We met during our second semester, in a creative writing class. She had this captivating energy, dark curly hair, eyes that lingered just a second too long, and a laugh that sounded like she didn't care who heard. I was drawn to her in the way people are drawn to trouble dressed up as confidence. At first, she was the best thing that had happened to me, attentive, passionate, obsessive in the way that feels flattering when you're young and dumb. The honeymoon phase didn't last long. Within a few months, the red flags started popping up. She didn't like me going to parties without her. She didn't like when I hung out with female classmates, even for group projects. If I didn't answer a text within 10 minutes, she'd send 3 more, then call, and if I didn't answer, she'd show up wherever I was. I excused it as intensity. I thought maybe she'd just been hurt before. I didn't realize how far she would go. When I finally broke things off, it was winter break. We were both staying on campus because our homes were out of state. I figured the holidays would offer a clean break. I met her at a cafe and told her it was over. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She just looked at me and said, "You'll come back. You're still mine." I brushed it off as bitterness, but deep down, I felt something cold take root in my chest. The next few days were quiet. I blocked her number, removed her from my socials. I thought it was done. But then the messages started coming again from random numbers this time. "Thinking about you. Still waiting. You miss me too." I ignored them, convinced she'd eventually get tired. But the messages didn't stop. They escalated. I started seeing her on campus again. Not in the dining hall or the library, but lurking. Standing outside buildings I was leaving. Sitting in parked cars that vanished when I looked twice. Once, during a late-night study session in a common room, I looked out the window and saw her across the courtyard. Just staring up at me, not moving, not blinking. I turned around to tell my study partner, and when I looked back, she was gone. Then came the photo. It was in my campus mailbox. No name, no note. Just a single printed photo of me. Asleep. In my bed. My window was behind my head in the image, open just a crack. I don't remember leaving it unlocked. I went cold. I started pushing furniture against the door at night. I set up an app on my old phone to record sounds while I slept. One night, it caught heavy breathing for over 6 minutes. The phone was on my nightstand. I contacted campus security. They gave her a warning. She played dumb. Said I was just bitter, trying to make her look crazy. But even they seemed uneasy. One officer told me in private, "You might want to stay somewhere else for a while." So I did. I crashed on a friend's couch off campus for a week. When I returned, I found a gift box on my bed. Inside was the hoodie I thought I'd lost during our first date. It smelled like her perfume. No one had access to my room but me and her, apparently. One night, I came back late from a shift at the library and found her sitting on the steps of my dorm. Calm, casual. She said she just wanted to talk. I told her to leave, that I'd call the police. She smiled and said, "You'd never do that. You're too soft." And she was right. I just walked past her, locked my door, sat on the floor with my back against it until morning. I filed a formal no-contact order through the school. She was told to stay away from me. For a few weeks, it worked. Then one night, I woke up to the sound of my door creaking. It was 3:12 a.m. My roommate was out of town. I sat up, and she was in the room. In the shadows, standing over me, whispering my name. My chest locked up. I couldn't move at first. When I finally found my voice and screamed, she bolted. I don't know how she got in. I transferred schools a month later. I didn't tell anyone where I went, started over. But last Christmas, I got a card in the mail. No return address, no signature. Just 3 words. still in love. I hadn't posted anything online, hadn't spoken to anyone from my old campus, but she still found me. I never told my wife. She doesn't know that I sleep with my phone recording every night, that I check the locks 3 times before bed, that I never park in the same spot twice. But some mornings, I find things moved, a cup I didn't touch, a curtain slightly open. And sometimes, when it's really quiet, I swear I hear my name whispered from outside the bedroom window.
Story 3. The door wasn't locked. Jordan wasn't the worst guy I'd ever dated, but he was the scariest. Not in the beginning, though. When we first met, he was charming, intense in a way that made you feel like the center of the universe. He opened doors, brought me coffee, remembered every tiny detail. It felt like safety. But intensity like his always comes with a price. And it didn't take long for his intensity to become obsession. We met at a mutual friend's birthday party. I was coming out of a breakup and he made me feel wanted again. Special. Seen. We talked until 4 a.m. that night. He texted me as I was walking to my car. Wish you didn't have to leave. I smiled. At first it felt nice. But looking back, it was the first sign he didn't know how to let go. 3 months in, he had keys to my apartment. I didn't remember giving them to him. I think he took them off my keychain when I was asleep. He started showing up unannounced. Sometimes with food, sometimes just to make sure I was okay. I ignored the unease. I wanted it to work. I was tired of failed relationships, but the red flags became impossible to ignore. If I took too long to answer a text, he'd call. If I didn't pick up, he'd come over. Once I was sick in bed and didn't feel like talking. He banged on my door for 20 minutes straight until I let him in. Then he cried and said he thought I was dead. I started feeling more like a hostage than a girlfriend. When I told him I needed space, he said, "If you leave, I'll lose everything. I'll hurt myself." That was his go-to line. Guilt was his currency. The final break happened after a horrible fight. I told him it was over. He begged, screamed, cried on the floor, said no one would love him like I did. I walked away trembling. I blocked his number, changed my locks, and warned my building manager not to let him in. I thought it was over. A week passed. Then one night, I came home from work and saw my bedroom light on. I live alone. I always turn off the lights. I unlocked the door slowly and walked in with my heart pounding. Everything looked untouched. But when I went to my bedroom, the window was slightly open. I never open it. I checked the closet. Nothing. But my pillow had a distinct dent, like someone had been lying on it. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe I forgot. Maybe it was nothing. But the next night I heard footsteps. Above me. I lived on the top floor. There were no neighbors above me, just the attic. I stood still, straining to hear. Then I heard a soft creak, like someone shifting their weight. I grabbed a broomstick and pulled the attic ladder down. Nothing. But in the dust on the floorboards I saw prints. Bare feet. I didn't sleep that night. I shoved my dresser in front of the door and sat up all night with my phone in one hand and a knife in the other. I called the police in the morning. They checked the attic. No one. They said maybe a squatter, but I knew better. They asked if I had an ex who might be stalking me. I told them everything. They made a report, but without evidence or a direct threat, there was little they could do. A few nights later, I woke to music playing. It was my speaker, connected to my phone, which was turned off. The song, a playlist Jordan made me in our first month together. It wasn't saved on my account anymore. My hands were shaking as I turned it off. I went to the front door, and it was unlocked. I know I locked it. I always lock it. I bolted every lock, pushed the couch in front of it, and cried myself to sleep. The next morning, I found a sticky note on the mirror. "You forgot this." It was in his handwriting. I checked the apartment. Every window was locked. The chain was still on the door. There were no signs of forced entry, but someone had been inside. Someone who knew exactly how to move without making a sound. Someone who still had a key. I moved out 2 days later, got rid of everything I owned. New city, new job. Didn't tell anyone from my past where I went. I thought I'd finally escaped. But a few weeks ago I got an email, no subject, just an audio clip. It was me, brushing my teeth, humming. You could hear the running water, the hum of the bathroom fan. It had been recorded from the hallway just outside the door. I live in a secure building now. Cameras, doormen, triple locks. I haven't seen him, haven't heard his voice, but I know he's watching. I know because sometimes I wake up and my door is unlocked again, even when I swear I locked it. And every time I try to tell myself it's just stress, I remember what he used to say. I'll always be a part of you, whether you want me to or not.
Have you ever broken up with someone and felt relief? Like your lungs could finally breathe after months of suffocating? That's how I felt after I ended things with my ex, Jason. At first, he was charming, a little intense, but I liked that. He'd text me cute memes, show up with coffee, say he couldn't stop thinking about me. But as the months went on, the constant need for attention turned into obsession. He tracked my location on SnapMap, questioned me when I didn't respond in 5 minutes, and once even showed up outside my work after I said I was too busy to meet. So, I cut it off, blocked his number, deleted him from everything. I thought that would be the end of it. I moved apartments a few weeks later, not because of Jason, but because I had found a cheaper place closer to work. Only a handful of people had the new address. I didn't even post it online. For the first time in months, I felt like I could relax. No more late-night arguments, no passive-aggressive texts. Just quiet. But that quiet shattered the night I found a note under my windshield. It was just 3 words, scrawled in red ink. Nice new place. I froze in the parking lot, heart thudding. No name, no signature. But I didn't need one. I knew it was Jason. I tried to convince myself it was a coincidence. Maybe someone else wrote it. Maybe it was a joke. I even laughed nervously to myself as I walked back to my apartment. But when I checked my door, there was another note taped to it. Same handwriting. This time it said, "You can't block real life." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch with the lights off and a kitchen knife in my lap, every creak of the building making my nerves twitch. I hadn't spoken to Jason in over a month. He shouldn't have known where I lived. I called the police the next day. They told me, unless he physically harmed me or trespassed, there wasn't much they could do. I started changing my routine, parked in different spots, took different routes home. But the notes didn't stop. Every couple of days, I'd find another one. Sometimes in my mailbox, sometimes slipped under my door. Still waiting. You're so much prettier when you're scared. And once just a single printed photo, me from behind, unlocking my door. That was the moment I knew I was being watched. I bought blackout curtains and set up an old baby monitor app to act as a motion detector on my windows. I even asked my landlord if the building had cameras. It didn't. But the worst part? I had no proof it was Jason. He was still blocked on everything. For all I knew, he was watching every move I made without saying a word. Things escalated about 2 weeks later. I got home one evening and noticed my welcome mat was missing. Odd, but not horrifying. I shrugged it off, but when I stepped inside and turned on the hallway light, I saw a single footprint on the wood floor. Muddy. A man's shoe. Big. My apartment was small and always locked. No sign of forced entry. Nothing was stolen, but someone had been inside. I could feel it. I started hyperventilating and called the police again. This time, they came out and filed a report, but without signs of a break-in. They said it could have been my imagination. They suggested I get a security camera. I ordered one that same night. The camera arrived 2 days later. I set it up in my living room, facing the front door. It had motion detection and a live feed to my phone. That night, I kept it open on my nightstand while I tried to sleep. Around 3:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected. My heart stopped. I opened the app. Nothing, just the dark room, still and quiet. Maybe a glitch. I tried to go back to sleep. But 10 minutes later, another ping. Motion detected. I opened it again, and this time I saw movement. A shadow. Tall. Just outside the window. I couldn't make out the face, but the way it stood there. Just staring. It was him. I knew it. Jason had found a way to watch me through the cracks in the curtain. I screamed and called 911. The police arrived 10 minutes later, but the figure was gone. I showed them the footage, but it was too blurry to identify. They told me again they couldn't do anything unless I caught him on my property. I begged them for advice, and one officer suggested I file for a restraining order, but I needed proof that it was Jason. I didn't even have his current address. That night, I did something I never thought I would. I unblocked him. Within minutes, I got a message. "Took you long enough. I missed your face." I didn't respond. I took screenshots and sent them to the police. I started the restraining order process the next day, but Jason must have sensed something changed because his messages turned darker. "If I can't have you, no one can. You look good in red. Should I bring paint?" I blocked him again. The fear had become paralyzing. I stopped going out, called in sick to work, had groceries delivered and barely opened the door. Every knock made me jump. I even heard tapping on my window at 2 a.m. one night, but when I opened the camera feed, nothing was there. Or maybe he had already backed away into the shadows. My life had become a prison, except the bars were fear, and the warden knew my every move. Then came the final night. I had dozed off on the couch with the TV on low. Around 1:00 a.m., I woke up to the sound of glass breaking. The window. I grabbed the knife from under the coffee table and ran into the hallway. He was inside, Jason. Pale, eyes wide, holding something I couldn't see in his left hand. I screamed and lunged, adrenaline taking over. The knife hit his shoulder. He screamed in rage and stumbled backward, knocking over a lamp. I ran into my bedroom, locked the door, and called 911, hyperventilating as I pushed my dresser in front of the door. I could hear him banging, screaming, trying to break in. The police arrived just in time. Jason was arrested, blood dripping down his arm. He had broken the window with a crowbar, which they found next to my couch. The notes, the break-in, the photos, it was all him. He had even stolen a set of keys from my old place and guessed I'd moved somewhere nearby. He's in jail now, serving time for breaking and entering, stalking, and attempted assault. But even now, months later, I still sleep with a knife. I still flinch at footsteps in hallways. And I still wonder how many times he was watching, without me even knowing.